The Fort Lewis College softball team makes a Cinderella comeback at the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference tournament, and fly fishing is the next class in our School of Skills. I'm John Mahoney in for Jordan Alexander, and you're watching Inside Durango Sports.
You're watching Inside Durango TV Sports with Jordan Alexander, your source for information about sporting events in Southwest Colorado.
In what could only be characterized as an incredible team effort, the Fort Lewis College men's and women's cycling teams grabbed third place in the Team Omnium at the Collegiate Road National Championships, held the first weekend in May in Richmond, Virginia. Thanks to two men's national championship wins and strong finishes for the women's team. The Omnium is the compilation of all the points that cycling team members earn in team time trials, a criterium and a road race during the three-day championship. Men's cycling coach Dave Hagan said Richmond closed its entire downtown for the races and rolled out the red carpets for the nationals. The collegiate races were a practice event for Richmond, which will host the Union Cycliste National Races in 2015. The Fort Lewis men's team started the weekend of wins, taking first place and the Division I National Championship title in the team time trials. Not only were they fast, they were 33 seconds faster than second place Marian University. Coach Hagan said the team of Griffin Easter, Zach Noonan, Dean Huss and Nat Kavelka worked like a well-oiled machine to get their third man first over the finish line. The women's time trial finished fifth in a field of 11 teams. Saturday saw the criterium, a Durango favourite during the annual Iron Horse Classic, and Richmond crowds came out by the droves, said Hagan. With 70 minutes plus 4 laps, the men's criterium was a brutal course that included what Hagan called a very big hill. Dean Huss pulled out with a solid break after 5 laps and held the lead until the last 3. The Fort Lewis team collapsed. Huss slipped to 69th in the end. Renan Meyer was the only team member to finish in the top 10. All but one member of the women's team got caught behind in an early crash in the crit and couldn't catch up with the leaders in the field. Only Ivy Crawford finished in the top third. The final grueling road race of 7 10-mile laps that were punctuated by a stretch of cobblestone pavement and 2 kilometre-long hills saw Griffin Easter break away to the lead with only 2 laps to go. Teammates Zach Noonan, Dean Huss and Nat Kavelka fended off all challenges to get Griffin across the line in first place and the national championship. His time, 2 hours, 42 minutes and 51 seconds, only 3 seconds ahead of his nearest challenger, Brad Negos of the University of Denver. Hagan said the men's team faced a field of 176 riders, including a number of professionals. Cycling is a club sport, and unlike in NCAA teams, athletes can compete professionally and collegiately at the same time. In addition to Easter's win, Zach Noonan took third and the 2 remaining team members finished in the top third. In the women's race, Jenna McPherson turned in Fort Lewis College's best performance at 18th place. For a complete list of race results, visit the FLC cycling team's website at fortlewis.edu/cycling. So how about this for an underdog story? The Fort Lewis College softball team, seeded 8th in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Tournament, struck down top seed Mesa, then 4th seed Metro, then Colorado Springs to line up for the championship game as the only team in the tournament to stay unbeaten. Due to the double elimination format, Metro moved into the losers bracket and progressed to the final that way. Sadly, the Roadrunners stole the glory from the Skyhawks, winning 13-2 in the championship game, to inflict FLC's first loss and force a second championship game. A walk-off home run in extra innings saw the Metro team topple the Skyhawk Giant Slayers 2-1. Metro took home the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference Championship trophy. The Skyhawks' incredible and unexpected run started with their 14-9 defeat of Mesa. 3 RBIs for Caitlin Bending and 2 from Adriana Rostenhausler led Fort Lewis to the win. Metro State were toppled next from Victoria Johnson's skilled pitching. Johnson struck out 3 batters and allowed no runs on only 5 hits. Senior Kamali celebrated her final game before returning to Durango to graduate with a big triple hit to score 3 runs. University of Colorado at Colorado Springs were the Skyhawks' semi-final opponent. FLC went 5-0 up through 2 innings, only to surrender 5 straight back to the Mountain Lions. UCCS took the advantage with a 9-7 lead in the 4th, but 3 Skyhawk runs in the 6th and the game winner in the 7th inning swooped Fort Lewis into the championship games. Despite falling at the final hurdle, Fort Lewis was the tournament's star team with 3 Skyhawks named to the All-RMAC tournament. Team pitcher Victoria Johnson, outfielder Missy Fundora, and utility player Adriana Rostenhausler's performances were recognised by the league, and these players were presented with certificates of achievement at the conclusion of the tournament. The playoffs conclude the Skyhawk softball season, and what a season it's been. Nearly the champions, they finish in 8th place in the conference with a 26-29 record. Farewell softball until next year. And now women's lacrosse. It seems Fort Lewis won't have any 2014 RMAC champion trophies this year, with lacrosse also falling at the last hurdle. Coach McDonald's stick-wielding Warriors pushed aside Mesa in the semi-final game of the playoffs to set up a championship game with the powerhouse Regis University Rangers. 5 different Skyhawks hit the back of the net against Mesa to secure an 8-5 win over the Mavericks. Brooke Wineland scored twice, assisted twice, and collected 3 ground balls to lead the statistics game. Jam Vertner and Jessica Norby followed suit with 2 goals each. Fort Lewis responded to each Mesa goal with one of their own to halt any kind of momentum, and by halftime were up 6-2. Alyssa Spencer protected the Hawks' net with 8 saves. Number 1 seed Regis watched as their potential opponents took chunks out of each other, and the extra rest proved the difference in the championship game of the playoff tournament. The Regis Rangers proved why they are the feared team in the RMAC, as they overran Fort Lewis 14-5. Norby led the number of goals scored by the Skyhawks with 2, but Fort Lewis reacted too late to overcome 9 back-to-back first-half goals from the Rangers. In consolation, FLC scored twice at the end of each half to show that never-say-never attitude they've exhibited all season. The Fort Lewis lacrosse team finished the season with a record of 10 wins and 7 losses. They return next spring for more stick-on-stick action. Congratulations to both our Skyhawk spring sports on their strong finishes to their season. If fishing is like religion, then a fly fisherman would say that fly fishing is high church, with apologies to Tom Brokaw. We invite you to bone up on your fly fishing skills with Steve Meyer in this week's edition of School of Skills.
Hi, I'm Steve Myers, and this morning I'm going to give you an introduction to fly casting. I was a guide for 25 years, but I'm retired from that now. I'm an angling author, written a number of fly fishing books, and I'm currently teaching in the English department at Fort Lewis College. What I'd like to do is give you an introduction to fly casting that goes through a basic progression that will finish with a cast that allows you to extend the line. So we'll start with a fixed line cast at a fixed distance. Then we'll learn how to hold the line in the air doing something called false casting. Once we've learned how to false cast, we'll be able to shoot line while the line is in the air. So let me start with the fixed line cast. I have about 25 feet of line out, and I will demonstrate this for you, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing. The whole point in fly casting is to cast a lure that doesn't have any weight. And the difference between fly casting and other kinds of casting is that when you're bait casting or casting a lure, you get the lure or the bait with some lead moving and it pulls line off a reel. But when you're fly fishing, you're casting an imitation of a fly that's an artificial fly, and it doesn't have any weight. And it's very wind resistant because it's made up of feathers and fur. So instead of casting the fly and having it pull the line out, we attach the fly to a weighted fly line and we cast the weight that's in the line. In a fixed line cast, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start slowly lifting the rod and accelerate and then stop it abruptly. When I'm lifting the rod, it'll bend the rod. The weight of the line will make the rod bend. It'll store the energy of the weight of the line in the rod. The rod becomes a spring. I'll stop the rod abruptly and the spring will flip in the other direction and throw the line behind me. I'll wait for it to straighten behind me. I'll do the same thing coming forward. I'll start slowly, I'll end abruptly, the energy will be transferred into the line and the line will move forward. Going back, we call it the back cast. Going forward, obviously, we call it the front cast. It's very important that you make those motions distinct with abrupt stops. And that forms what's called a loop. If you look at the line, you'll see that there's a piece of line that's connected to the rod tip that's stationary, and line that is moving either forward or back, connected by a curve in the line, that's the loop. Anything we do when we're casting that makes a loop happen is good. Anything that makes the loop fall apart is bad. Abrupt stops make the loop happen. Without the abrupt stop, the loop doesn't happen. And that's the fixed line cast. The next thing we want to learn how to do is hold the line in the air with something we call false casting. In false casting, instead of bringing the rod down after the front cast, I start another back cast, and I can do that as many times as I want. When you're fishing, you do this for a number of reasons. The two primary reasons would be to allow us to extend line while the line is in the air and make the cast longer. And also for fishing a dry fly and the fly got wet, we can dry it by false casting it in the air. So I'm going to do the false cast again. And then the final delivery is exactly the same as the fixed line cast. And now I'm going to show you how to extend line. We always want to make sure that we have the line tight when we are making the abrupt stop to form the loop. When I'm going to be extending line, I'll be releasing the line with my rod hand and holding it with my other hand, which I'll call the line hand. After the loop is formed, when I come forward, I'll release the line and let it slide through my palm, and that'll take some line out and extend the cast. So I'm going to lift up in false cast, and now I'm going to do what's called shoot the line. Each cast I can let a little more line out, and that allows me to lengthen the cast. In order to start again, I want to shorten the cast. I put the line under the finger on my rod hand. I pull on the line from behind that finger. This is called line retrieval. I'll retrieve whatever line I want to retrieve. And then to start the cast again and extend the cast, I grab it with my line hand, I release it with my rod hand, I false cast and shoot line, and that allows me to make the cast longer. Let me go through that progression one more time, and this is the basic fly cast. This is also called an overhead cast. So the first thing you want to learn how to do is to cast a fixed length of line, forming good loops with a slow start and an abrupt stop in both directions, and then set the line down. Now we're going to false cast to learn how to hold those loops and keep them up in the air. And finally, we're going to shoot line by releasing the line from the rod hand, holding it in the line hand, and letting go of the line after I formed the loop on the forward cast. And that is basic fly casting. Okay, so one more thing that we need to talk about is how to hold the rod. In all sports, how you hold the implement that you use is very important. You don't want to hold a baseball bat incorrectly. You don't want to hold a golf club wrong. Grips on a tennis racket influence the way you hit the ball. There are three basic grips that are approved and there's one that's definitely not approved. Let me show you the not approved first. A lot of people who haven't been told how to hold a fly rod will just grab it with their hand around it. If you do this, all sorts of bad things happen. The main one being you don't have a firm grip on the rod, but also you tend to use a lot of wrist. And I hope you noticed when I was doing the demonstrations that I tried to keep my wrist fairly firm. That's where the power in the cast comes from. So the approved grips all help you accomplish that. The one that is most commonly taught now is a grip with the thumb on top and then the fingers lightly holding the rod underneath. Two others that you may see and you may want to try are a finger on top grip, which is often used when you're casting in close. It gives you a lot of delicacy and accuracy, especially if you line that finger up with your dominant eye. And then the last grip that's approved is called the key grip, where instead of having the thumb right on top, you rotate it over just a little bit. When you start casting great distance, it gives you a little bit more flexibility for moving your hand around. But I would argue that 90% of the great casters that I've seen cast use thumb on top. So I would start there. Okay, let's move to something else. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about in terms of basic fly casting is something called line control. You have a hand that's doing the casting and a hand that is handling the line. They both need to be involved. When you're casting a fixed length of line, you can lock the line under the finger of your rod hand because you don't need to be able to let the line go out. But for almost all of the fishing that you do, especially fishing in moving water, in rivers and streams, often you'll be casting upstream. You'll be lengthening the cast to get the fly to the fish, and the fly will be coming back toward you, and you want to keep the line under control. In order to keep from getting excess slack in the line, you need to strip the line in order to take up that slack. And if the line is under this finger, in order to keep the line under control from the finger out to the fly, and you're shortening line, you want to shorten the line and strip with your line hand. And then, when we want to cast it, we want now to lengthen the line. Now is when we grab the line with the line hand, release it with the casting hand, false cast, and shoot line. And one good thing to learn how to do is how to bring that line back under control, under this finger, without having to look at your hands, because you want to be watching the fly. The whole point of this is to catch a fish. If the fish comes up to eat the fly and you're looking at your hands, you might not see it and you might not set the hook. So you want to practice just bringing the two hands together and grabbing it under that finger. If you bring the two hands together and put it under that finger, you don't have to be watching it. You'll see a lot of people doing this. The whole time they're doing that, they're not in control of the fly. That's fly casting. Thanks for watching.
Are you hooked now? With the end of the school year comes an end to collegiate and prep sports. This summer, Inside Durango Sports will cover city recreational sports and Little League Baseball. Be sure to tune in to our next show when we feature men's 6-on-6 soccer. Next week's games feature the Bad Goats C team against the Goonies at 6:15 p.m. on Wednesday, May 14th at Santa Rita Park, followed by the B Squares against Nayarit at 7:15 p.m. On Sunday, May 18th, the action starts at noon at Santa Rita with Bad Goat facing Rogers Equipment Sales, followed at 1 p.m. with the B Square against Pub Team, and finally Carver's Brewing Company competing against the Goonies at 2 p.m. That's it for Inside Durango Sports. We'd like to congratulate regular sports anchor Jordan Alexander on his graduation from Fort Lewis College on May 3rd. I'll be filling in for him while he visits his family in England this month. I'm John Mahoney. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, keep watching. You'll like what you see.
Thanks for watching Inside Durango TV Sports. Tune in every Thursday for more sports headlines.